I've been pressing into God for quite a while now to, for that breakthrough. For I can see that He has greater things in store for me, but there was something that kept blocking me along the way. And sometimes you would think, oh, it's this or it's that, and I thought, well, no. I every time I go back, it's something else. It's something else. And in talking to persons, it was going back to just keep going back, just keep asking the question why. So I asked the first why, and when I got the answer to that why, then asked another why and another why, until I got back all the way down to my childhood and the why back into childhood. And that brought me to that point. And while I was aware of this situation having an impact, I didn't realize until this exercise, or I didn't acknowledge until this exercise, that it was really the seed of everything else that had happened. And the issue was that as much as I would say I communicate fairly well in terms of my emotion, there was this one conversation that I never had, and that was with the person who was part of the seed. I wouldn't say it was the seed, was part of the seed. And because I never had that conversation, I just held on to that, whatever was presented to me in that moment for that seed to be. And I then realized that that was what I had to address. That seed was what I had to address. And until I did that, I couldn't break free. I couldn't become everything and everything that God wanted me to be until I addressed that. But I was afraid. I was scared stiff to address that seed, because I didn't know how this person would react. I didn't want the drama. But not more the drama. I didn't want to hurt the person, because I thought for me, I was in a good place that I could live with it, kind of thing. But right. I didn't want to hurt the other person. And as much as what the other person in my mind did hurt me my entire life, I still didn't want to hurt that person. I also had to go through a period of forgiveness, that, again, not for the other person, because, and this is a different person now in the story, who was part of that seed, and the thing is that other person is no longer alive, so I couldn't even forgive them from that point of view. But I had to forgive them from me and my heart. And that whole process, I realized I had to address that in order to break free into whoever, who God is calling me to be. Because I keep hearing that I'm calling you for greater, but I still was holding back that seed, and that seed was the reason why I kept believing that, oh, He's calling me for greater, but it can't be greater, because I am not worthy of being greater. I don't deserve to be greater. And again, it all then went back to that seed, and having to address that seed was really what needed to be done to get to this point of breakthrough.
Talk to us a little bit about that. What is rejection? What was that like, and how you journeyed?
What I find interesting, though, is for my journey of rejection, is that it was not. What was interesting is that I was rejected from this, in terms of this seed, but my father was such a strong force of reaffirming my worthiness, and constantly pushing me, that it was kind of interesting that I would even fall for this seed. It was because he was such a strong force, and it's still such a strong force in my life, although he's been dead longer than that he was alive with me, but his presence was such a strong force. It's still amazing that in spite of all he put in me, that rejection still was allowed to get that root. And that I find that always amazing. So to a certain extent, I feel a sense of not unworthiness. Like, I'm not able to help those who don't even have that, who have like complete rejection all around them. I don't know if my story is going to be quite for them, because I still have that element of support to a certain extent. He would have died 4 days before my 21st birthday, and I thought my world was coming to an end. And that's where the rest of the rejection then came in. Although I knew what he said, I didn't have anyone like him supporting me from there on. So that rejection part was then allowed to, I guess, overtake me in some ways. But the rejection for me permeated everything that I did, and everything that I did well or with confidence was because I heard my Father's voice, and not only my earthly Father's voice, but my heavenly Father's voice. And I always say thank you, I have a small D daddy and a big D daddy.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
So I always say thank you, daddy, to the both daddies, because whenever I achieve something or whenever I go after something with confidence, it is usually their voice I'm hearing. And when I feel down and all that, it's the other voices I'm hearing. And the other voices are of rejection. For example, I was so slim, like most of us have been as women. Most of us in our teenage years was also slim or whatever. But because of things that persons in the neighborhood said to me, I thought I was at least 500 pounds around. So, and this time I was like probably 110 pounds. But in my mind, I am walking around and I'm actually buying clothes for not 500 pounds, but I'm buying clothes for a big person, although I'm a skinny person, because of what these persons have said to me and make me feel as though my body was not worthy. So even my body, I rejected my body. And it's only in recent years, months, that I've started to accept my body and not reject it anymore. So even my body, I rejected. I would go places. I remember going to a restaurant and I'm standing in the line, and this young man, never saw him before, never saw him afterwards, said something to me that was quite complimentary in terms of my intellect. And I looked at him like, why did you say that? He said, I can see you always try to be very unassuming. And that has stuck with me from then till now, because I realized that here is this complete stranger and he could see that I was trying to dumb down myself because I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want persons to see who I didn't want persons to see who I truly was. I didn't want people to see what I could truly achieve, because I didn't want them to reject me. And not that I would fail at what I'm doing, but that they wouldn't like me. And I wanted them to like me. And the interesting thing is that I wanted them to like me, but I didn't want them necessarily to be in my space.
What do you say to someone who's struggling with that? How do you navigate through rejection?
I've been there, and the really and truly the end result is look yourself in the mirror every single opportunity you get and speak the truth. Speak the truth to yourself. Speak the truth that you know God has said about you. And even if you're not a believer, if you happen to be hearing this segment and you're not a believer, speak the truth that you know that you are. Because if you sit down and you think about it, you know that there's no reason you were put on this earth to be abused. There's no reason you were born into this earth to be lesser of a person than you were intended to be, regardless of what your faith base is. And just every time that someone says something to you that is negative, or a thought comes into your mind that is negative, take up that mirror and look at yourself and remind yourself of who you really are. And over time, you'll eventually really believe what it is, because you are not going, it's only so much you can do to lie to yourself when you're looking yourself straight in the eye. It forces you to be truthful with yourself. When you have to look yourself in the eye, it forces you to speak your truth. And that's what I would encourage persons to start doing. Start speaking your truth to yourself.
And how does one handle rejection when they are of faith and the rejection happens in the church setting?
Well, what I can say now is that you have to know your relationship. Is church a business, a community space? Is church an association? Or is church where you go to build on your relationship with God? And once you keep your focus that you're there based on your relationship with God and not with people, and you're being obedient to Him and not to man, then that helps the process. It's not going to be easy, because unfortunately, you're going to find out that although you're in the church and you expect that the more persons who will be thinking relationship, you'll be shocked to see even your leaders are not thinking relationship with God, but they're thinking head of an organization, a multi-million-dollar organization, or a social club or whatever. And therefore, you're going to have to keep yourself rooted in knowing, building your relationship. And you can only do that by being in constant word and prayer with Him, of course. It has to be a personal journey you're having. And then you'll be able to stand up then when you're in that church environment and you're being called upon repeatedly to do something, and you have to say, nope, I'm not doing that. And they go, oh, but no, I'm not doing that. And when you say something like, I'm taking holiday, and someone says to you, but you can't take holiday from church. Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, you can. All right, because as we often read in the Bible, but somehow we seem to forget, God rested on the seventh day. Jesus, before his ministry, went to 40 days in the wilderness. What do you think he was in the wilderness doing? Working? No, he was pressing into his God and preparing himself for ministry. Every time Jesus did something, there was a period of rest before or afterwards. And there was a reason for that, to be able to reconnect with the Father, to find out what the Father's purpose is. And it's the same for us in church. So don't let us continue to buy into the false narrative that we've built about what church is about and what church work is about. It's time for us to change that narrative and bring it back into what the Word of God says it's about. And therefore, my call to action would be to say to you, fix your crown, my father princess. You know, your royalty, just fix your crown. And if you need some help in fixing that crown, just reach out to someone else and they'll be there to help you. Make sure you reach out to someone who knows about how to wear crowns, though.